Hello! You're listening to Talking Utter Slot, the slot car podcast. Be it Scalextrics or Carrera, Slot It or SCX, we love buying, racing, and most of all, talking about slot cars. My name is Scott Brownlee, and I'm joined as usual by my fellow slot addict,
Pedro. Hello everyone.
In this episode, we'll be revealing how wrong I was about birthday gifts from family, full-size races at Sebring in Saudi Arabia, and how an old magazine article made me realise that today's slot cars are not as expensive as I thought.
And it also brought back happy memories for me, if you remember, in that little chat.
I don't, if I'm honest, but I'm pleased.
Oh, we're starting as we mean to go on.
I'm pleased it did.
Slightly forgetful. Right, advance warning, I'm just going to move my microphone. There we go. That's better. That was a lot of noise and I apologise. Go.
I think we need to start with a couple of updates. I'll tell you how I got on at my recently discovered local club. But first, the listener is eager to know, have you put any decals on any cars?
That's... you know the answer. Then why are you asking me that? That's just unfair. The honest answer is no. I have looked at the car. It's still on its little spray stand. I have looked at it a couple of times. Did I reveal what it was? I want to keep that secret because I don't want the boys at the club to know what I've done. It's a very complicated livery, I've discovered. I think I knew it was a very complicated livery at the time, but I've just realised how much more complicated it really is, and also that I'm actually putting it on the wrong car. Which
okay, it's all good.
Technically, it's going swimmingly.
What could possibly go wrong?
But the annoying thing is, technically, that makes it a fantasy livery when I'm dead set against those. But basically, I've got a set of decals for a particular Lambo, and it turns out that the decal, I think it works this way, the decals I have are for an Evo, but the car I have is the sideways car, and that ain't no Evo. And that's really annoying. And I didn't realise at the time. I only realised once I'd got the things in my hand and I started looking at more and more research pictures and realised they move things around in terms of where some of the decals are, which is, race by race, that does happen. But also, it's very clearly, I was looking at pictures thinking, oh, that's a good one, of the one-to-one, and just blindly went ahead and bought them from Atalaya, I think it's called. And it turns out they're Evo decals and I've got the non-Evo car. I do wish someone would make an Evo Lambo, because there's a lot of pretty liveries out there. Just saying, Chris in France, sideways, if you're listening. But the answer to your question is no, I haven't put any decals on. I have, however, purchased another couple of sets to not put on things.
And why not? I think it's definitely the way forward.
Some people collect plastic kits. I collect decals.
You collect decals. I'm coming that. I was going to say, if you want a little bit of balance, you can ask me how many of the half dozen cars that are on the workbench awaiting a small bit of soldering I've done a small bit of soldering on.
Okay, just 2 points there. You're saying it wrong. It's soldering, clearly. That's, And secondly, how many projects have you got on the go, Scott?
Oh, well, there's about half a dozen cars that need some soldering. And I'm going to
what are you
stick to
soldering?
Well, it's like loose wires or, guide blades, that sort of thing.
You solder guide blades?
Well, you put the wire onto the thing, don't you? Have to solder that.
You put the wire onto the thing. Do you not use grub screws?
I've never
been
used
converted.
grub screws.
So I got ridiculed by, let's name and shame. I'm going to name and shame.
Hard to believe.
I know we don't have a solicitor, but I'm going to name and shame John Underwood. There.
Oh, right, okay.
Said his name. I use the term top hats for the little brassy bits that you put on the end of the motor wire.
Okay. We used to call them something else, yeah.
Oh, I saw them called top hats, and I thought, well, that works in a stovepipe Abraham Lincoln kind of way. And I mentioned that down at the club, and I got ridiculed. And I just thought that was unfair. But now what I do is I use grub screws and screw the little swines into the guide.
But that's a good idea on the old, but some of these are just the wire is soldered to a bit of metal, which then goes into the guide. So
Right.
reconnecting the bit of the wire to the bit of metal is what I need to do.
Is that an
This is
old
things like
school
classic.
way of
Well,
doing
no,
it?
it's like the classic F1s, so the Lotus 72, the Tyrrell,
You're talking
one of my
Skeletric.
Skeletrics, one of the
Yeah.
Japanese Supras. What else have I got to do? So yeah, it's that kind of one of the Lotus 49s, I think.
Hang on. Whoa. Japanese Supra. That would be an Inco. That wouldn't have been soldered anywhere.
No, not at all, not at all. Skeletrics. I mean, what did they market it as under? Was it Quattrox or
Quattrox.
something? Quattrox.
I had those.
that
I had
means.
I had a full set of them, and I loved them. They had.
And what
they
did you
had,
do with them?
I flogged them on eBay eventually. I loved them so much. I couldn't make them work that well. They had. Do you remember? Disc brakes that didn't spin round inside the hub. Their disc brakes were connected. They had a full-on kind of not servo system, but the disc brakes side to side were connected, so they didn't spin round in the hub.
Ah, I do remember that now you
So-
mention it, yeah.
So you could clearly see them not spinning round as they shot past at a scale 500 miles an hour. What was the point? I didn't understand quite the point, other than the fact that whenever you picked it up and looked at it, the disc brakes would be in the right place.
Well, you talking about scale speed has reminded me of one of the discoveries I made this week. Because I was rummaging in a magazine storage thing, and I had some old Skeletrics catalogues, and in among it I found my Skeletrics speed computer.
Oh my
Did
God!
you ever have one of
yes.
that? You know, the
Well, I had several.
cardboard disc.
Yeah.
And so it's a thing of beauty. I think I did it once. Now, for people who don't know what this is, I will put a picture up. But if you Google it, it was two pieces of cardboard held together with a little brass clip in the middle as a sort of hinge, and you had to count up the length of the lane using the handy diagram on the back of the speed computer, which gave you the length to 2 decimal places of every piece of track. And then you would time your lap, and then you would line these things up on the speed computer, and it would point to a scale, as in a full-size speed. And more often than not, it was something ridiculous, like 300 miles an hour or something, because of course a toy car goes quite quickly. Anyway, you mentioning scale speeds, that's sort of... But no, so I've got a number of things on the bench that need fixed, and what I go out to do is I think I could do that, or I could unscrew another car that does work from its box and just play with that one, which is what I guess what I do more often than not.
Path of least resistance.
Path of least resistance. That probably leads me to talking about things that arrived in the post, because we're both a year older than the last postcast, aren't we? It was
true.
only a week ago, but we've both had birthdays. And for the previous podcast, as a premise for us having our own slot car company and working out what we wanted, the starting off point was we said, well, birthday's coming up, and we seldom, I think we were careful, we said seldom, not never, get given slot cars as gifts. Well, my family clearly do listen to the podcast because they proved me wrong, because both my sister and my mother got me slot cars, which was great, and there were things that I wanted. This was because I told them what I wanted.
Is your mother? Don't you force her to listen to the podcast?
No, if you
Oh,
knew
I
my
thought you
mother,
did.
there'd be no forcing. No, there'd be no forcing. No, I think she may force her friends and neighbours to listen to it. So that may be the other way around. If you look into the data, you can see where there's a consistent listener in the sort of the borders of Scotland,
The Strathclyde area.
and that's my mother. That's my mother. Anyway, so yeah, it was great. I got a Jägermeister van. The VW Skeletrics one, which is absolutely lovely.
Can I just say, I'm happy that it's great for you, Scott, on your birthday, and that you were getting all these gifts, which you're now going to tell us all about, because I'm an orphan, Scott. I'm an orphan now, and I've played that card too often. But yeah,
You have.
my mum doesn't. She doesn't even speak to me from the grave.
If she did, she'd probably say buy more slot cars. So I think you can.
I'm not sure she would. Go on, sorry. You
Go
got a Jägermeister VW van.
I got a Jägermeister van, which has got what I think are the most precarious wing mirrors on any slot car model.
You mentioned that to me earlier. Yeah.
Because they sort of stick it. I mean, it's quite tall and obviously quite heavy. I mean, it was something. It's over 100 grams.
Is it really?
It's quite a hefty little thing, yeah. And then
Has it got a full interior? It's not a bus.
It's got it's got this one's a van, so I don't know whether the bus ones have seats in, but it's got a driver, and the dashboard and the steering wheel stuff's quite nicely done actually, for as much as you can see. It's nicely done. And the I got a Sierra. Now this was a good one. This was I thought this was sort of I want to say a sale section on a well-known slot car selling website, and it arrived with.
Hang on, is that Amazon?
No.
Oh.
No. Although you sometimes get slot cars. No, this is Pendle. But it arrived with a thing I'd heard about but never had, because I had about 10 years off slot cars. I fell from the path of righteousness and was buying diecast instead. There's a thing called a
Apostate.
Is it a PRC chassis? PCR?
I think it's
sort
PCR.
of three which appears to be a Skeletrix made thing, because it's a Skeletrix branded package with Slot It on it. And I'm guessing, you'll know because you go racing, that this is so you can fit Slot It bits and then put those bits on that chassis under the body for the Skeletrix car. Is that?
Yeah, you clearly
gist?
were on the other side of the planet for a few years, weren't you? There was this kind of a link up, very brief. I don't know if it even lasted a year, between Skeletrix and Slot It, where they did, as you say, they made a chassis that would take Slot It components just dropped straight in. And I think a lot of us men of a certain age wish they had continued with it, but obviously the board at Hornby said, well, we're not making money on this, and why are we encouraging sales of other people's spares? Let's stop doing that. So they did, which is a crying shame.
Is that a record from the meeting, or are you just supposing that was the reason? I mean, could it be that just nobody bought a separate?
Yeah, and Sean ended up giving them away.
I think the market for separate chassis for Skeletrix cars is quite small, you know.
I think you're probably right, and I think those fools with their printers probably cater for it. So yeah, it's a sad but true thing. But I think it's an interesting acknowledgement from the board that their stuff isn't that. You know, they knowingly make toys, don't they?
And nothing wrong with that, you know.
There isn't.
What I have to say is I took the Sierra out of the box, as usual, and I took the Magnet out, as usual.
Hang on, what library was this? Did you mention
the Labatt's one, the Tim Harvey?
Yeah.
Somebody I worked with. Anyway.
No. Seriously?
Yeah.
Genuinely?
That's not the reason.
That's four in a row, Scott.
Yeah, he was a...
Can he make it 5?
Obviously, he drove for Austin Rover when he first started, or when he started saloon cars, and then he was one of the touring car drivers who drove the Igos for Igo Football project that we did with Top Gear. Right. And one of his stories is about the look on my face when they were smashing all the Igos up.
That wasn't the pinnacle of his career, was it?
Well, I would beg to differ, but he probably would. No. Anyway, the point being, I took the Magnet out, put the Sierra on the track, drove it round, and it's lovely. It goes well. Yes, it slides a little bit, but it's that's what's nice about it. And I feel no need to change the tyres, the chassis, the gearing, the motor. It's got a green end on the motor.
I know you messaged me about that, and I got excited on your behalf because I believe the green motors are better. That's what I replied to you.
Is that
you messaged me about it. I think they are hotter than other things. As I said to you, I got a Z4. Correct pronunciation there. I got a Z4 with a green motor in it, and I promptly whipped the motor out and put it in a 911 because I like the Z4, but I like my 911 more. Anyhow, your Labatt's and your discussion with me about PCRs and so on and so forth made me... How weak was I? How sulky was I that I hadn't had a birthday gift? That I promptly went out and added to an order of spares for Sean. I don't answer the phone. Pendle. They Labatt's from their sale list with a free PCR chassis, which I'm hoping will come. But there's some kind of problem with my credit card at the moment. But I'm looking forward to that.
I'm not sure how to follow that up, really.
Well, you could cast all sorts of aspersions. Is that the right word? You could cast all sorts of doubt on my financial standing, or indeed dodgy places
I would
I've
do
been
that.
using my credit card.
My financial stand. This is why I was encouraging family to buy me slot cars, because I really shouldn't be buying them for myself. But just to complete the list, I got the SCX Barracuda, the silver one, which is new. And
Which I'm also jealous of.
But essentially, I have got, because, as you remember, because we first got to know each other as we helped set up Slot Forum a million years ago, there was an anniversary gathering, and which I don't think you were at, unfortunately.
No, you told me about this, and I thought, why wasn't I there? That's annoying.
I can't remember. This was about, well, it's way back, so it must be at least 10, 11 years ago.
Oh, easy.
And I've got a lime green SCX Cuda with a box which says 1 of 50 made specially for Slot Forum, blah, 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 blah.
So where's mine?
I don't know. It's probably still in a bag in a Birmingham hotel. But as you know, I'm fearless in the sense that, collector's cars, I take them out the box, put them on the track and whiz them round.
Hallelujah. I'm with you.
But this one, I haven't done. My hand has stayed somewhat. So, and I took it out, put it on the track beside the silver one, took a picture of it, and said these are effectively identical. The new one's got a different motor in it, but they're effectively identical, all bar the colour. And because of that colour, one of them is worth, 5 times the other one, which is crazy, really. But there you go.
The lime green one being the valuable one.
Well, in theory, you have to find somebody daft enough to want to pay hundreds of pounds for a car of a certain colour. So,
Now, this wasn't scripted, and this isn't going to go well, but... What was the name of the film where the dude has to drive all the way across America in a Cuda? And have I actually got that right? Is it he doesn't actually drive in a Cuda anyway? And he ends up driving it... Spoiler alert, he ends up driving it into a bulldozer. Vanishing Point. Was it Vanishing Point?
Vanishing Point. Well,
was that a Cuda?
I don't know. Certainly what that kind of car, whether it was a Cuda or not.
Our American listener, if he's hung on, he'll know.
I bet the American listener can let us know. The other movie, which is a similar sort of event, was the bank robbers, lots of chasing through some
Blues Brothers
farmlandy stuff, and then they're about to get their was it Crazy Larry and something?
Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry.
There you go. They were in a go faster car, weren't they? And at the end, they're just about to get away, and they drive into a train, I think. Sorry for all these plot spoilers for these movies.
So, Dirty Harry, Crazy Larry, if that's the right way around, that was an important film for me as a pubescent teenager.
Impressionable young lad.
Susan George, I say no more.
Probably,
but Susan George
just as well. Although it does lead me down a track.
Oh, she could lead. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Do you? Well, you don't have scenery for your. We don't really have a permanent drive. We don't have scenery, do you?
I've got a lot of track. Most of it is under the sofa. But if I have mentioned to you, I have a cunning plan to make a small track on boards. And if there is scenery, there will just be grass, and that'll be it. She's very disappointed.
But you could get some Carrera pit girls.
Really? Are they new, like anime figures? I find them a bit bizarre. They're going back to the Quattrox, they came with a little anime figure, didn't they? Pit girl.
Very bizarrely, only in Japan. When you bought the Skeletric version in Europe, it had the little indentation on the base for the figure to go in, but there was no figure. The figures were a Japan-only thing.
I must have had Japan versions then of one or two of mine, because I had the Grid Girls. Well, I had a couple.
And you sold them.
Yeah,
you sold
for
them.
good money. At the time.
Actually,
I'm sure they're a bit more now, but
well, yeah, they're nice. They're nice models. I think they were.
They were.
File under too expensive to make sense because the amount of detail and stuff that went on them, probably. The reminds me, and I was talking to you this other day, there's a guy on Facebook, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head, Japanese chap, forgive me.
Yeah.
And he posts, it'll sound ridiculous, he takes his car to the track club in Tokyo, and he goes for lunch somewhere, and he also stops by maybe a temple or the railway station or something sort of scenic in the city, and he does the most wonderful photographs of the car in the city on the track by his lunch, and he has a little description of what he had for lunch, and there's these lovely photographs of someone enjoying life and slot cars.
But it's bizarre, Scott. I'm sorry. You sent me a picture. You sent me a link or something, and there was a picture of a bowl of soup with some chopsticks and a slot car beside it. It's like, what is going on here?
It's lovely. It's really good. I part of it is one of the tracks he goes to is in a big multi-floor toy shop in Tokyo, which I've been to with work, and they've got a big wooden track. But they obviously run races that they're a club space in Japan is at a premium, so they run club races and stuff there as well. So that has a certain connection to it. Anyway, that's talking about Japanese stuff. And finally, one thing I must just mention is that to complete my little set, I got a Mini, which is something I'd pre-ordered way back when.
So this was a Christmas.
BTCC.
This was a birthday present to yourself.
But probably last year. I can't remember when I ordered it. I mean, there was stuff that's taking a lot of time, and I was a little bit, is it going to be okay? It's going to be down. And yes, it's got a very fast motor in it, but I run it at 9 volts anyway. It's charming, I have to say. It is charming.
Sorry, I was paying attention. Shakes his head. Did you say it's the Clubman one, the square front Mini?
Richard Longman Mini
1275. Yeah, I don't know why. When they changed the Mini from the original Mini to the Clubman Mini, it still had a bizarre, sweet charm to it, I thought. I think some people were offended by the new front, but I think they're both quite sweet. And that car is quite a nice looker. But what did you find out about the motor?
It's the thin, long one that goes far too fast. Yeah. Same thing that's in the Formula 1 cars, which...
Rubbish.
They're a toy. It's meant to run with a magnet. I take the magnet out, turn the voltage down. It's great. So,
Didn't you also find that the motor comes out, though?
Well, it doesn't seem to be... Yeah, normally when the motor clips into the chassis, so even if the body's not on the motors... What seems to be the case is that you have to put the body and the interior on, and it holds the motor in place.
I think that is outrageous.
Well, it seems to work fine, but that's.
Okay, sorry. So when you sent me a picture, I thought you were implying that the motor would be flapping around inside and just destroying teeth on the pinion, but the bodywork will hold it in place.
The bodywork seems to hold everything. I mean, this thing is tiny, so
yeah, I can imagine.
There's not a lot of space in there anyway, but it seems to work quite fine.
Hmm.
Anyway, that's enough about my birthday, and I'm sorry you didn't get any slot cars.
Yeah, we're only 20 minutes in, and we've just finished your birthday list. So well done, you, Scott. I say again, I'm technically an orphan. Technically,
I'm not. I think you could. Is that only applicable to people who are minors? Anyway.
No. I'm claiming it. I am an orphan. My sister bought me something. We did have a deal that we wouldn't buy birthday presents, and lo and behold, as is her wont, she bought me a fleece. Bless her heart. She's a sweetie.
There you go.
But she would never go anywhere near Sean. I don't answer the telephone. Pendle's website.
Well, I must confess, I led the jury, as it were, because I suggested to Mum that rather than a sweater, she get me a slot car.
Led? Didn't you? No, hang on. We're not having that. You actually provided links, didn't you?
Well, no, I did better. I placed the order. I wasn't leaving anything to chance. No.
So they will refund you in good time. It's one of the sad things. Let's get philosophical here for a moment. Let's just tone it down. Let's get philosophical and deep here.
We need some suitable music for this.
Okay, I'll see if I can find a bed for this.
Do you remember the old Radio 1 Simon What's-His-Face, Our Tune?
Yeah.
There was always some dreadfully traumatic thing, and it was the theme music.
The theme music was forever associated, although neither of us can remember. Anyhow, let's get philosophical. As you get older, as you age, as your primary school years in the playground turn to teenage years behind the bike shed smoking, don't you lament the end of the gift voucher in the birthday card? You used to get a lot of birthday cards in the post when you were a kid, and you'd open them up, and sure enough, Auntie Gertie had given you a £5 voucher for W.H. Smith's, and then Auntie V had given you a £5 voucher for W.H. Smith's, and these vouchers would stack up, and you'd feel loved. And then as you get older, and they all die off, and you're left an orphan, left as an orphan, not you're left an orphan. Here, look after this child. He has no parents. Suddenly all the vouchers disappear.
Are we lamenting the loss of family or the loss of vouchers? I'm not sure. Could you be more specific?
Well,
Be careful how you answer.
yeah, priorities. Which do I say? Well,
Because
the loss of the.
I'll
I felt the
help
pain
because
of
you
the
can
loss
still
of the
get
vouchers.
Yeah, you can still get
No,
vouchers.
you can't get vouchers. You get these silly plastic cards, like little credit cards. It's not the same, Scott. Things were better in my day. Our day.
Howdy. Oh, you're lumping me in now. I'm much older than you are.
Oh, you don't escape. You're not that much older than me, are you?
That was flattering for you, I thought.
Oh. Well, as an orphan, I'll take that.
I'm going to find a button that every time you say that, there's going to be some violin music. Please.
Oh, I'll
Really,
make a note.
really.
I'll make a note.
Sort of violin music.
Since
Anyway.
we now do music on the thing.
Hopefully.
Podcast.
I love our theme tune. It's great. Anyway, shifting from all of that, do you want to talk about real racing, or should we not bother?
What? Sebring?
Sebring, F1. Are you excited that, as we speak, Fernando Alonso is on the front row of the Grand Prix?
I genuinely am excited for Fernando. So I have a complicated story. I have a mate in India who I exchange messages with on a Grand Prix weekend. And I was saying to him, Perez, I hope he is allowed to race and win one, and that they don't just say, try and part the waters to let Max through, which seems to be kind of the Red Bull way. But I'm also hopeful that Alonso can hold on to his place. He seems to be talking it down that he won't be able to challenge Sergio. But I at least hope he can hang on to his second place. And wouldn't it just be... I would be delighted for Alonso. I know a lot of people don't like him, but I would be delighted for him if he managed to bag a win in this year. It would be such an excellent story.
Would he be the oldest F1 winner?
What is he? He's 41. Maybe. I doubt that very much.
No, probably Fangio was probably a bit older.
Yeah, he was probably about your age.
Ooh, cutting.
Yeah.
Ooh,
but
cutting.
I am excited. As we started recording, I made noises about, we've got to get this done before 5 o'clock, because that's actually, we've got to get it done before 4:30, because I do like the grid walk. I'm hoping that Martin is there and going to do a grid walk, because I like that. It adds to the whole ambience of the session.
When I stopped watching F1 quite some time ago regularly. I catch the odd one. But back in the day, I remember thinking the best bit was the preamble and the grid walk, and I thought that tells us a lot about the quality of the racing, doesn't it?
Well, I would say the best bit is the racing, the grid walk is good, and then all that Sky do before that, some of the inane stuff that they do with their presenters around the track and with the drivers, I just find so tedious, so I don't bother tuning in for that. There you go. I don't understand why they have to dumb it all down and make it so... well, they do, because they're trying to appeal to a wider audience, but nobody sits there when the FA Cup starts and says, okay, so here's how the offside rule works, but we have to go through all sorts of stuff with Grand Prix, or we used to. Maybe we don't so much now, but...
that hasn't the Netflix thing helped with that one, hasn't it? It brought in all the new people.
Educated the masses, yeah. And that program alone is why I am frequently hovering over the buy now button with a Netflix subscription. I still, I'm going to end up having a Netflix subscription just to watch that and then cancelling.
Okay, I signed up to watch Stranger Things and never cancelled. But before we go down that path, it's a shame, or well, perhaps a point of discussion, given that Drive to Survive, I think it's called.
I think that's cool.
Has done wonders for the popularity of Formula One, particularly in America. Would we say that Hornby, A Model World, is doing anything for the popularity of Scalextric?
I don't think there's anything there to discuss. Sorry, you were going to say what? You're going to say yes.
Well, no, I was going to say, I imagine in its way, it probably is, actually. I mean, it probably, even if it just reminds people. I know it's predominantly about the trains, isn't it? And,
Choo-choos.
Which is great, because that's the name of the company and all that.
I have yet to tune into this second series. I haven't watched one of the second series yet.
Yeah, I mean, I was in a previous life when I had got paid to do these sort of things. I would have always cautioned against having a behind-the-scenes documentary, but in my day, they tended to be looking for problems that they wanted to make excitement out of. these days in this kind of program is sort of one extended kind of I mean, I think it's substantially more scripted than our podcast. Wouldn't be difficult.
I was going to say that wouldn't take much, would it? I realise. I realise. Having said I haven't watched one of the series, I have watched one of the series. Isn't that just like me to say something and then go, "Oh, hang on, let me correct myself"? I watched one that was all about the little TT Flying Scotsman, which I found quite interesting, and almost. Well, it did. It sent me to Tinternet to see how much TT scale Flying Scotsman might be, because I thought, well, I could just set up a little oval of track, and it's smaller scale, so it wouldn't take up much space. And I discovered that it's a couple of £100, 160 quid for one loco. Oh, blimey, Riley! You got to be a serious train spotter for that.
I think they're not cheap, are they? But
no.
But then again, talking about price, segueing, darting, flirting about like a butterfly subjects. I was talking earlier on, if we haven't edited it out, about how I was rummaging in old catalogues. One of the things I found was a series of pages which I had torn out of a 1991 edition of Supercar and Classic.
This is
which
seamless.
Was a very
Scott, this
glossy,
is seamless.
Seamless, isn't it? Very glossy classic car magazine. And it was written by a journalist that I know called Richard Bremner, and fantastic photographs of his collection that he had then. Whether he still has it, I don't know. And reading it, it's a lovely thing to read. But one of the things that took me aback was he refers to new cars from Scletric costing about £25. This is 1991. And so I went to the internet and found a ready inflation adjusted price worker outer thing and put in £25 in 1991. What would that be in today's money? And do you know what it came out to be?
I'm going to guess at £300.
No, it came out to be £53. What's the retail price of a Scletric's car these days?
Well, there's quite a few of them at
About
£53. Oh.
So and I think a lot of people had all gone, oh, your prices have all gone up very dramatically, they're unaffordable and blah, blah, blah. And I was very guilty of that. For some reason, I thought slot cars were 25 quid not that long ago. This may be because I'm old, and 1991 isn't all that long ago. But nevertheless, so they're basically the same price as they were 30 years ago. So,
and yet,
I don't remember thinking they were desperately expensive then. So
no,
they're certainly a lot better.
One of the key, I was going to say, there you go. One of the key things is they're a lot better than they were 25 years ago. A lot better. Even if you accept that the Mini needs its body on to hold the motor in place, they're still a lot better.
Well, 30 years ago, the motor was probably clipped into the body. It probably didn't have an underpan.
No, that's true. Like my BRMs.
So, yeah. Anyway, it's very. I think, and the other thing that came up in that article was reference to a couple of specialist shops.
Oh yes.
One of which we share an experience of, which was Model Motors, then in Bourne End. I think it still exists in Maidenhead. And this was the early days of me getting into it, and it was a toy shop, and there was lots of stuff, kits, etc., old and new. And I was having a rummage and buying a car, and the guy said to me, "Oh, are you into slot cars?" I was, yeah. And sort of there was a kind of slightly, espionage wink, and he invited me into a small back room.
Hang on,
which
Scott.
was lined.
You are in a specialist retailer.
Specialist shop.
And,
specialist retailer.
And the proprietor says, "Would you like to come round the back, sir?"
Yeah.
Be careful,
and there's
Scott,
a small
careful.
room which had shelves and shelves of what we came to know as SCX cars, because at the time, of course, they couldn't be imported officially into the UK. Anyway, I was very excited, very wide-eyed, and there was a BMW M3 which I instantly bought, and it felt especially special because it was sort of secret and illicit. So there you go. But you, it turns out, you also used the same shop.
Yeah, you put that article in a space for me to share, and I had a little read of it, and then you pointed out that it talked about Model Motors, and I thought, I know Model Motors. So back in the day when I was living over in Bourne End, Buckinghamshire, Model Motors was on the parade there, and I one day just innocently went in because it was no offence to the fellow, but it wasn't the tidiest of shops. It wasn't the most kind of professional of emporiums. But I stumbled in, possibly, just on the pretext of looking at some die-casts, because he always was into die-casts. And at that time, the SCX had made its way out from the back room onto the main shelves, and it wasn't top shelf stuff. It was there, precariously balanced along all the homemade shelving that Mike, I believe his name is Mike Savage, I want to call him, I think that was his name, was a Ninko. There was some Ninko stuff, and I bought a Ninko McLaren F1 GTR in the Ueno Clinic livery, and he told me about the Maidenhead, or it might have been called the Hurley Slot Car Club. And I went down thinking, I'm going to blow all these boys away because they've got Scalextrics and I've got this incredible piece of technology, the Ninko McLaren F1 GTR, no clinic livery. And so I rocked up, and I fairly had my backside handed to me on a plate because I was rubbish and they were all very good at this big track that they ran. But it was happy memories. I ended up going there for many years. The Oxford Club actually is a descendant of theirs, because when they lost the gig to hold the club at the cricket club, we put the plexi track into storage, and when I moved over here it came out of storage, and it was the track we used for the Oxford Scalextrics Club for quite some time, for a good few years before we switched to Ninko. And I also, as
Fantastic.
I said, told you, when Mike moved more into the diecasts back in the days when I was a vaguely competent front-end developer, I put together a website for him to flog his mini champs on. So that one article had me right the way down memory lane.
It's great, isn't it? This young people is lots of noises from your end.
Yeah, I apologise. I've just realised there may be the sound of a washing machine spinning, and then that may be the sound of a washing machine beeping. Hold the line, dear caller. I'm back in the room.
What I was going to say, the benefit, this teaches that having that old press cutting and that sparking those wonderful memories is the benefit of never throwing anything away, says the man who hoards 1991 magazines. But anyway.
Yeah, you must have quite a pile.
So I was going to make a comment there.
Well, thank you for not, because I have no idea where you were going with that, and it could have been wholly inappropriate.
Uncomfortable.
Mm.
Only inappropriate.
Oh, I see where you were going.
Tell us what caught your eye recently.
Oh, what caught my eye recently? Can't remember.
Do you want me to give you an old man hint?
Well, I can.
Do you remember those things we discussed just before we started recording?
We discussed stuff? Who are you? Where am I? This isn't my house. I do remember saying that I quite like the look of. I won't buy one, but I am impressed by. Is it Slot Car Passion? And they do like reworkings of flies. I don't know if they work together in a collab kind of way. Collab being social media speak. But there's a Slot Car Passions /Fly 911, some kind of rally car that looked quite sweet, and I just thought, yeah, got a wistful. I am hovering on the edge of buying another Fly car, which is ridiculous, but
ooh,
it won't be one of those because they're too expensive. But
I quite like Fly 911s, and this one seems to have got new, very lovely wheels. And I think there's probably a whole program about how the bits of a toy car, which are especially lovely, and it's wheels for me. The wheels, when Mini Champs first came out in diecast, it was the wheels were the thing. But this Slot Car Passion / Fly 911 has got some rather lovely and weathered sort of period 70s type alloy wheels, and I haven't seen them on a Fly model before, so I may be wrong.
Do you think that's
that's
the input from Slot Car Passion, that there's some kind of dodgy resin wheel that won't just last? It certainly won't take the running around the track a lot.
I don't know, because I haven't read enough about it. But
no, I don't know.
If it is, yeah,
I'll happily display a lack of knowledge here. But I assume part of what Slot Car Passion add to it is resin bits like the spots and the roof racks and the spare wheels on the back and that kind of jib jab.
They have, I think, Slot Car Passion, again, as I understand it, they take existing mass manufactured
stuff,
cars, models, and they normally Spanish Electric stroke SCX, and they add stuff and detail and liveries, and they are very nice.
Yeah, they are.
But the prices are suitably. I mean, effectively they're handmade, aren't they? So I've never succumbed to buying one, so
No,
I don't know whether they're.
and I think we both agree
Shelf
that
queens or
these limited editions aren't. If it's a limited edition slot car, then it is intended to go in the slot, and it is intended to be raced. And you can say it's got in a presentation box and worth a fortune, but it should come out and actually be run. However, that said, a slot car passion. If I'd spent that much money, I would just be loath to run it and risk breaking something. One of those nice extra details.
What's the most money you've ever spent on a slot car?
I don't know the answer to that question. Well, I mean, other than Revo slot, I've got a few Revo slots, and they're probably the most expensive I've bought. But I did buy at normal retail prices the original. I don't know which is 956962 slotted Newman livery Senna car, which was in a box and very nice, and I ran it, and probably that John Underwood. Let's blame everything on him. He probably said, you shouldn't have run that, that's worth a fortune. And it probably was, or would have, as it turned out, it became worth a fortune. But I wasn't, it came in a fancy box, so what? It was a nice livery, and I wanted to run it, so I did.
Okay.
I think I had a Van Squish, as I like to call them. I had a Van Squish JPS, which I ran. And those go on eBay for about... So they get listed at about 150 quid. I don't know whether they go for more or actually achieve the 150 quid, but I know they go for silly money. And I ran mine and destroyed the diff. Funnily enough,
well, I think every time you ran one, this was one of my number. We raced them at the club, and it was the magnets and stuff. I think the benefit of whipping the magnet out, which I normally do, is of course it put less strain on the rather delicate differential. But those are interesting, aren't they? Because when I remember when they came out, they were oversized. They weren't particularly detailed. The diffs used to break.
Yep.
I remember them being discounted to buy them, so that's probably why I've got a few. And now, so effectively, it was a failure. I mean, they were not a success. I don't think. In commercial
were they
sense,
not?
Whoever was making them at the time.
Well, were they not?
Well, I can't presume because.
Sorry, I'll say it again. Were they not? Some kind of spin-off of Flycar Model. Flycar Model have just had so many offshoots and sub-companies, but I thought they were something to do with Fly. And that just could be me pointing the finger without any evidence.
I think that one, I don't have any proof that you're wrong, but it doesn't sound right. Because one of the things about Fly, is they wouldn't have, you can argue about how scale accurate they are, but I don't think they would have got them that big. The Vanquish cars were, they were pretty big, weren't they?
But wasn't that in order to
incorporate it's just that part
the diff? They had to be bigger because there's a bubbly old diff in the back.
So we told ourselves. I mean, whether that was true or not, I don't know. And but I just find it fascinating. Things which are a failure end up being the more expensive once it starts getting collecting them. But there you go.
Sweet irony in that. The other thing that caught my eye and that tempts me is I think I sent you a link. I'm so anti. I'm like incandescent with rage at the Thunderslot Mustang. I just don't get that thing.
Okay.
Whatever. Move on. The McLaren, they've just announced a couple of McLarens, and I quite like the blue one. Can't remember who drives it. I think it was a Fuji race, and it looks quite sweet. And I'm quite happy with my T70 Spider. I'm more than quite happy. I can't race it against anything else because of the way the club works, but I really like it. I do really like it. So I thought I might get another one.
Now, I haven't got a Thunderslot, but and I know there's lots of controversy about the Mustang. Are the Can-Am cars more, shall we say, accurate?
I think
because I think one of the
I believe they're more accurate, but I don't believe they're quite 1/32. Others will know for sure, but I believe they're not quite 1/32. I think they might have been slottified a bit, maybe made wider. Don't know, but they look okay. Whereas that Mustang looks wrong. No, don't start me on the Mustang. Who brought up the Mustang?
You talked
brought
about
up the Mustang. And
I brought up the Mustang. Sorry,
you didn't. I did.
Well, you to be fair, you started it.
Yeah, I did.
But talking about slow, I was Dave Kennedy was talking about the SCX Barracuda, which one of the reasons it's lovely is it's quite wide and low. It looks great. It's probably not scale accurate. He said at the time he advised them to just make it a little bit wider.
Oh, did he?
And he said, as he coined the phrase, which I think was he Ninko-ized it. And of course, that was always the thing about Ninko. They were just a little bit wide. They weren't scale. They were just a little bit wide, which is partly why they handled so well. But it's always funny with scale models. We all think cars are squarer than they are because we don't tend to see them from above. We don't. Whereas with a model, we see it. It's a funny angle, and we always think the models are thinner and longer than the real car, and it's seldom the case.
No, that is an interesting observation
anyway.
right there. Because
I keep looking at the old days of
sorry, you go on.
No, I was going to say the old days of corgis and dinkies. It was about they would make it look right, and then as scale became more important in die-cast models, I remember the time people saying this is actually the right shape, it's size. It's just that you've got to get used to seeing it that way. So the transition from toys to models, I guess.
So I've been looking a lot. This sounds weird. I've been looking a lot at my Bastos because every time I look at it, I appreciate it.
Never a bad thing to do.
I appreciate it more and more. Absolutely. I think it's a thing of beauty. And
is it because it's red? Is that why you like it more?
Because it's the right red. No, it's the SD one. Just always. It was the space age future to me. I mean, my dad drove Austin Maxis, for God's sakes. The Rover SD1 was just like, whoa, that looked like luxury. Had a V8, or some of them had a V8. It looked like luxury. It looked like the future because it was sort of it was an edgy design. I always loved them, and now I've got this Bastos one. I like it a lot, not the least because it got a podium in its first outing. I'll say no more than that. A podium on its first outing. Okay, it was a 3-horse race, but it got the second place, so that's good.
All right, so it wasn't last. That's
no, it wasn't last.
Oh, that's good. What defeated it? If I can, what was faster?
Almost certainly, I was being foolish, as is my wont, and it was Scalextrics in lines, so it was probably an AMG GT3. They're the dogs. What's it's down at the club, but I thought, no, I have to race this thing. It's a beautiful thing, and others need to see it. And so I showed it to them, and it got second place. Anyway, my point is,
so
I've been looking at it a lot, and I put it beside the XJS, and the XJS just looks wrong beside it. But I'm sure somebody measured it up and said, no, that's a pretty good scale thing. But it just looks wrong beside the SD1, which I also believe to be quite an accurate scale model. So I don't get that.
I think, I mean, like you, I believe, what we're talking about a minute ago, real cars are never quite the dimensions we think they are because of the way we perceive them. We tend not to look at them sort of from axle height, for one thing. We tend to be standing above them and looking down on them, and we approach them tending to be from the side rather than head on and all that sort of thing. But when we look at a model car, we look at it from a very funny and peculiar angle. But no, I think that I don't get too hung up about whether it's exactly right. They look roughly right, and that's good, and they're good fun to run. I mean, the Mini, I put the Mini beside the Rover, and it's very small, and the Rover is very big. Yeah. So that seems about right. Yeah, that seems about right.
That looked right. Against the XGS, it looks wrong. Repeat that photo for me.
With the XJ, okay.
Yeah.
But you talking about you were racing a 1980s Group A Rover, against a 2020s a GT3 Mercedes.
Yep.
Is that...
I know the grid looks a bit off. I'm all in favour of grids looking a bit on, to be honest. But this thing is in line, and I wanted to race it because I won't be able to persuade the boys to go for Group A cars. I don't think, not unless Scalextrics really expand the range quite a bit, which my fingers are still crossed for. That Volvo 240T, come on Simon, you want to.
Well, we had, did you see his comment about for those who haven't listened, we did a show about what we'd make if we ran our own slot company, and Simon, who is the product manager at Scalextrics, let's just say he's not offering us any consultancy contracts. anytime soon.
Well, he's a fool. He's a fool. I've said it before.
I think he. I wouldn't go that far. I'll say he maybe just needs some convincing.
Yep.
Maybe if you gave him his money back, that sort of thing.
Well, that's ransom money. I'm holding that.
You're holding that ransom. Oh well, that's fair enough. But no, it's in the. I say I went to my local. I discovered there was a slot car club only 6 miles away from me, which I think I didn't know about. But anyway, I went along a week or so ago for the evening. So hello, the chaps at Ifold Slot Car Club, if you're listening to me. Thank you you were very welcoming, hospitable. Paint a picture, village hall, build the track up, take the track down at the end of the evening. Classic thing. At first, I think, for anything I've been to, it was 2 lanes, so rather than 4 lane or 6 as some of the ones are. And of course that kind of restricts how many races you can get through. But what they do, they have it's not really a handicapping system, but you set a time with the cars you bring, and they're in kind of rough periods. And then they try and match driver-car pairings which are broadly equal. So it can mean that you're doing kind of what you did when you raced the Rover, where you're racing an 80s car against a 2020s car, but it's the competition is roughly equal. So it was interesting. So as I say, every time I go to a different club, which I don't do all the time. It sounds as though I do. I've done it 3 times this year already, which is 3 times more than I've done it in the last 10 years. But it's interesting to see how people do it differently.
It does sound like you're trying to find a home where you fit.
No, well, one of the guys referred to me as a roving reporter, which I suppose was fair because the last time I saw him down in Worthing. It's always been, when I was into the slot cars before, it was always something we did. We came to Oxford, we went to Wolverhampton, down to Abergavenny. I think I've been to Rockingham once. It's good fun. Go along and meet fellow slot car fans, basically. I mean, I never do very well, and I'm not really looking to go racing on a kind of regular basis because it's not really what I do it for. I like playing with them rather than racing them. If I have to put a dividing line in it.
It's very interesting, the different approaches. Whereas there's a lot we have in common, there are different approaches. If I build this track, I'm not sure how much use I'm going to put it to, because I don't like the idea of just pootling a car around. I mean, not pootling, just trying to get a lap time. I like the idea of racing against other people, but not so much that I want to travel the countryside trying to find these other people to race against. I mean, bloody hell, third shout out to John Underwood, but he does a lot of miles going to various places. He races at Rockingham, he races at other places I've forgotten, and he comes to Oxford, and he puts a lot of mileage in just to race his slot cars. I mean, he's very good at it, so that's obviously some kind of return for the investment on the road. But I should mention, I have signed up to do the Polycar F1s at Gaydon. So I will be travelling to do some racing. Yeah, it's going to be embarrassing, but again, 4th shout out, John Underwood. Bloody hell, is he sponsoring this or something?
He bloody ought to.
He persuaded. Yeah, come on, sponsor us. He gave me hassle last time, again, saying you should do this. So I will. I won't. I will try and hold up the honour of talking at a slot, but I strongly suspect my car will be on the floor quite a bit, and also I will be
Do you know what this means?
The results.
You know what this means, though. You know what it means.
No, but I fear where you're
going. Do you?
Yeah.
Okay. The livery. What car are you going to race? What car are you?
Oh well, at the moment,
this Polycar F1.
Yeah, at the moment it'll only be the only option I have really is my. Is it? Oh God, I can't even remember. It's the South African March. Is it Gunston? I assume it's Gunston. But if the BRM, if the Marlboro man has arrived, then I will be racing a BRM.
But would you consider having a white kit, getting some decals, and doing a livery in Talking Utter Slot team colours? Blue and yellow.
You know the answer to that, Scott. That would be a fantasy livery.
Yes.
And that would immediately have me shown the door. You can't do fantasy liveries, NSR racing. You can't do fantasy liveries.
Is that a rule of the competition, or is that just against your principles?
It's a rule of the church.
The Church of Slot. The Church of Slot is very broad.
Well, I'm a member
so-
of the Church of Box Standard, not the Church of Slot. I think you'll find they have a different holy book, but the Church of Box Standard doesn't agree with fantasy liveries.
Not even one for your own podcast.
Not even one for my own podcast.
I'm seeing you standing there by the track in a kind of blue hoodie with a logo on it.
Oh, what a horrible image. Looking like some kind of roadman. Saying in it a lot.
In it.
Hey, slot racing,
Okay.
in it.
Oh, well,
Like.
which day of the weekend is that race on? Is it the Saturday?
Well, I'm
or the
turning
Sunday?
up on the Saturday. Whether or not that's the day I'm supposed to be there, I couldn't tell you. Fifth shout out to him. John Underwood said I'd be done by 12:30, so I'm going to hold him to that.
Okay, so there's no qualifying in it. It's just you throw your name in a hat and away you go. Is that it?
No,
What's
you
the-
get a car.
Well, fine.
I think your car's got to
For
go
the
into
next-
scrutineering, then there'll be heats.
Wow.
They're running it professionally, which is obviously going to be an anathema to me.
Is there a driver's parade? You will have to run round the track. Well, Oxford. Gaydon is now only 2 months away.
Is it really? Blimey.
2 months away. Sorry, I think I keep hitting the microphone there.
I was going to
2
point
months
out that
away.
it's your turn to do it this week.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Professionalism. So I think, we need to have a regular update on your preparations for what will now be referred to as the big race.
Hang on, the Great Race. I know, mate. It's going to be the Great Race again. Okay.
Well, the great race to me is Tony Curtis throwing custard pies around.
What?
You must have seen it's a movie called The Great Race, which has Tony Curtis as the baddie, a sort of Dick Dastardly type character.
Which I can see him doing very well.
You check out The Great Race.
I used to love Tony Curtis. This is more than we need to discuss here, but growing up as a kid in the 70s, any Tony Curtis TV show or movie, he was a hero of mine. I don't know quite why. He was. I love Tony Curtis.
Well, I think because he did good stuff, probably because of the Persuaders.
Probably 'cause
when
of the
we were young.
Persuaders, yeah.
And he was Harry Houdini. And,
Was he?
I recently watched How to Murder Your Wife, which is a good 60s film.
Oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go hit the internet and try and find some Tony Curtis films.
Tony Curtis. Look for The Great Race.
But
Look for The Great Race.
I'm pretty sure the Great Race is out Panorama Way. And I'm not sure
Here we
Gaydon
have it, folks.
is as hilly. There we have it. That was the accent for this episode. Is that what you were going to say?
The accent of this, I was going to say the impersonation for this week.
So you've dropped a name. I worked
Swedish.
with Tim Harvey.
Swedish.
What? That wasn't my Swedish. That was my Australian. You low life. We need to wrap this up soon, but I need to say to counter your I work with Tim Harvey, I work with Tony Pondit, I work with Tom Walkinshaw, whoever else you work with. That Anthony Reid lives in my village.
That's good.
Yeah, I've had a chat with that Anthony Reid. Was he third at
Right,
Le
and
Mans
is
once?
he-
I think he was third at Le Mans once, and he's runner-up BTCCCC 2 years running, I think.
Okay. I'm not. Yeah, I don't know Anthony. I have to say.
Oh, you don't? Wow,
I don't know.
that's controversial. Surely you've
Well, not
worked with him
really,
in the past, Scott.
No, I haven't. I haven't. And, so no, it was just it's coincidence. Well, if we talk about 1980s Austin Rover motorsport, there's a very good chance, or more recent Toyota motorsport, there's a very good chance I'll know these people. Outside of those very specific circles.
Have you met
that's not gonna
Anthony
happen.
Davidson?
Yes,
He strikes me as a good egg. I like Anthony Davidson.
I would go along with that. Yes, he is. As far as I can tell. Yep. So.
Okay,
Anyway,
it's that time of the show where it all falls a bit flat. So
all falls a bit flat. We should really it kind of peters out appropriately
yeah,
enough.
because my ears are super hot in these headphones again.
I think you're going to have to do a lot of editing on this one. Like
You know what? I'm just going to let
quite
it
a
roll.
lot of it.
I'm going to let it roll.
No.
Oh, I love it when it's
No.
sort of random.
If you're still listening, God knows why. But if you are, thank you. and it was much better planned than we actually made it. But that's all Peter's fault. I'm blaming him for leading me astray, talking about things which we didn't discuss, but it was all good fun. And we'll be back again with another one, and we'll look forward to an update. No, maybe on decals, maybe on preparing for the big race,
The great race.
and the other piece of the great race. And I've ordered. I'll leave you with a bombshell. I've ordered a controller with knobs on.
Welcome to the dark side. And on
Well,
that
let's see. I
bombshell.
haven't used it yet.
No, that's
On
true.
that bombshell. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Time to say goodbye. Goodbye, Scott.
Bye, Peter.
that was a bit behind the curve. Oh. And fade out. Oh, I'm going to bump into this thing now.
Yeah, you are. There's lots of rattling going on.
Yeah.